Kevin and I met 3 years ago, the first time I ever came to California. My friend Mark Krejci, some of you may know him, was leading a community and they were doing gatherings called Analog. And I don't know if anyone went to one of those before, but the first one that I ever went to was the last one that Mark was leading. And Kevin was speaking from Miracle Messages, and I'd never heard of Miracle Messages, never heard of Kevin, kind of went into it blind. And he shared his story. He shared what he was doing, what the Lord's been putting on his heart for years. And I was just so encouraged by him and his heart, and chatted with him a bunch afterwards. And we stayed in touch here and there since then. And so, when Yen said, "Hey, we're going to actually have Kevin come," I was like, "Can I be involved, please? Like, is there anything I can do?" And so she's like, "Well, you can chat with Kevin." And I was like, "Oh, this is going to be fun." And so what we figured for tonight would be great is I'll give it over to Kevin to kind of share his heart, share his story. And then after that, he and I are going to have a conversation. I've got a few questions on my mind that I'd like to just chat with him about, kind of go back and forth, hear his heart, dialogue back and forth. And then what we're going to do from there is break off into smaller groups, have a conversation about that. I'm going to throw on some of our problem solving caps on, I think, to try to help Kevin and Miracle Messages out, because we're a problem solving community and we like to think through complicated things. And so we'll do that, have some, I think what would be a lot of fun with that, and then come back and share those ideas with Kevin, get his input on it, and just have a lot of fun.
So nice to see all of you. My name's Kevin Adler. I'm the founder and CEO of Miracle Messages. We're a nonprofit organization that helps people who are homeless rebuild their social support systems and financial security. The way we do that is through a family reunification service, a phone-based buddy system, and a direct cash transfer program where we give $500 a month to people experiencing homelessness starting here in the Bay Area. So I want to start by just sharing this photo here. This is a family photo. That's me at the bottom left. It's my grandparents, my brother, my mom. In the middle there, that's my Uncle Mark. Now, Mark was a really special guy for me growing up. He was the kind of uncle who remembered every birthday, always send a card in the mail. He was the kind of uncle where you could just sit there and talk at length about like super burritos, because, that's what I had in common with my uncle at the time. And he was always the guest of honor at Thanksgiving and Christmas. He also suffered from schizophrenia, and he lived on and off the streets for 30 years in Santa Cruz. And it wasn't until he passed away at the age of 50, found in a halfway house, that I started thinking a little bit differently about the people I walk by every day on the streets. People who probably had a lot more in common with my Uncle Mark than I realized, but that I never really thought of as someone's son or daughter, someone's brother or sister, some kid's beloved uncle or aunt. And it wasn't until I had this really powerful father-son conversation at the gravesite for my Uncle Mark with my dad, where I was sitting there with my dad at the gravesite, at the tomb, right? The symbolism of sitting there at the tomb and saying, "Well, Dad, he's not here, and we have only been here once in 10 years. What was the significance of commemorating your younger brother, my uncle, in this way?" And, my dad talked about a person who never had a home during his 50 years that was stable, and having this place to remember him, to think about who he was. And I thought, this is a really beautiful gesture, but it doesn't tell me anything else about who Mark was. Like all of you in the last minute have learned more about my Uncle Mark than you would at his gravesite. And it just got me thinking, gosh, I go in the car, I'm going to pull out my smartphone and get on Facebook and see status updates from all these friends and acquaintances and all these people all over the world. And I'm going to learn more about my random acquaintance from, 8th grade that I'm somehow connected to on Facebook than I would about my own uncle at his gravesite. So I got a question on my heart that has really changed my life and has been with me ever since. How would Jesus use a smartphone? How would Jesus use social media? How would Jesus use wearable camera? And I started thinking, like, in our society, we use this incredibly powerful storytelling tools to tell our stories, to make videos, to share cat videos and GIFs. Like, it's fun. It could be engaging. But if Jesus were walking with us right now and had access to your device, how would he use it? What would he do with it? And I started thinking, gosh, I walk by people on the streets, and when I see a person experiencing homelessness, I see kind of an image like this. I see this person who, is that a person? Like, there's garbage everywhere. I'm walking down the streets. Like, I don't really think of that person as someone's son or daughter, or somebody. I think of a problem, homelessness as a problem. And homelessness is definitely a problem to be solved. But I just started thinking, what would it look like to not see our neighbors who are homeless as problems to be solved, but seeing them as people to be loved? Seeing people not as problems to be solved, but seeing people as people to be loved. I think of a GoPro camera, and how we use GoPros. We show how great we are, and then if we're real innovative, we do something like this: put a GoPro on a pig. But my answer to that question, in my own way, how would Jesus use technology we have, was over the course of a year, I invited 24 individuals experiencing homelessness to wear GoPro cameras around their chests and to narrate their experience of what life is like on the street. Hey, I just walked by you. You're still there. What's it like to be you? What's going on in your mind? You want to share? And over the course of the year, I had incredible responses, footage, just a lot of aha moments. And so two real lessons from that. So first, I got the footage back, and over again, I'd see children in the image, maybe a mom and a child walking by, a father and his son. And every single child that walks by a person who's on the street, they look back and they almost tug at mom and dad and say, Mom, Dad, why is that person on the street? They look, they stare, they point. And half the time you'd see the parent scold the kid. No, bad, dangerous, that's impolite. That's rude. We don't do that. The other half the time, they'd almost let the kid guide them to the person. And it made me think, 20 years later, who's going to be the more trusting adult? And also, what have we lost as adults that we once remembered as children? That even if we don't say it in the right words, that here's this person in a situation of extreme deprivation, and there's something wrong that shouldn't be like that. The other thing that I realized and heard, and this is what changed my life and led to the work at Miracle Messages, was encapsulated by this quote. I never realized I was homeless when I lost my housing, only when I lost my family and friends. And I heard this and I thought, that makes complete sense, but it doesn't really tell me, why is this a problem? Is there people wanting to reconnect? Is this a real thing? What can I do to be part of this solution? Could I walk down the street in downtown San Francisco, go up to every person who's homeless and say, do you have any loved ones you'd like to reconnect with? And maybe some will say yes. So having heard this over and over again in different forms about what I've come to call this relational poverty aspect of homelessness, this relational poverty, I decided I'm just going to see if I can learn more about it and see if there's something there. So went down December 2014, took a walk down Market Street, went up to every person I saw who was experiencing homelessness, and met a man named Jeffrey. And I passed Jeffrey the first time, and he was sitting there, as you can see in the photo. There's a bottle of alcohol there. He was swearing. He was saying some really offensive stuff. He was kind of talking to himself. I thought, this is probably not the guy I'm meant to talk to. But then, a couple blocks away, I said, God had spoken to me and said, I need to talk to everyone. And Jeffrey was certainly someone that I saw. So I'm going to sit down and talk to him. And I sit down and he's swearing and it's offensive and all sorts of stuff. And I'm about to get it up. But I say, let me just ask him about his family. I say, Jeffrey, is there anyone that you'd like to reconnect with, family members or friends that you don't know how to reach? It was the first time in our conversation that he looked me right in the eye. And he just paused and he said, I haven't seen my sister Jennifer in a long time, and my niece and my nephew Josh and Rachel, and my dad Harold, and I would love to reconnect with them. Can you help me? And so I didn't know what to do at that point. I had this kind of like awakenings moment. If anyone else has seen the Robin Williams movie, where people just kind of, I'm like, this guy just had this very cogent, conversation with me about this. So I decided to take out my phone and start recording a message from him to his niece and nephew and his sister and his dad. And I think you'll have a chance here to actually hear part of Jeffrey's message to his family.
My name is Jeffrey Michael Gottschall. I was born August 7th, 1969 in a small town in Pennsylvania named Georgeville.
Are there any friends that you would like to send a holiday message?
In Pennsylvania, in Georgeville, Pennsylvania, if you can.
Well, what are their names?
My dad, Harold.
What would you like to say to your dad?
I intend to go home and see you again someday.
All right, so here's time. Unmute yourself if you don't mind. And I have a question. What do you think I did next? What would you have done as a next step? You have this video on your phone. It's a few days before Christmas. What do you do as a next step?
You Facebooked them.
Facebook them? Okay. All right. So is that what I did? Is it a Facebook?
I assume you looked him up. You looked up his dad on Facebook and helped him find him.
And the correct answer, no one's ever gotten it right, is I did absolutely nothing because I didn't know if I could trust Jeffrey. I didn't know if he was telling me the truth, and I didn't want to interfere and make a mess. A week goes by, and then I decided to be a better person, just like whoever spoke. And I said, I'm going to go on Facebook and find a Facebook group connected to his hometown. So that's what happened. But it took about a week of sitting with it. I posted the video online on a Facebook group. And what happened next was a miracle, because within an hour, Jeffrey's video went viral. It was shared over 100 times, made the local news that night. Classmates started commenting, saying, hey, I went to high school with Jeffrey. I work in construction. Does he need a job? I work at the congressman's office. Does he need health care? Someone uploaded his high school yearbook photo, which you can see in the bottom right there. And in the first 20 minutes of the post, his sister got tagged. And we got on the phone the next day, and she told me that Jeffrey had been a missing person for 12 years. And this was broad daylight, downtown San Francisco, a few days before Christmas. And here's the video that she recorded to Jeffrey.
I've been talking to many people, trying to do what I can to get you home and the help that you need once you're here. My holiday message to you is this: if you don't give up, I won't either.
And a few days after that, they got reconnected on a phone call, and later in the year, they were able to reconnect in person. And this was the first time in 22 years. So did this solve Jeffrey's homelessness? Did suddenly, okay, now he goes, lives with his family, and all his underlying addictions and all the things he's facing suddenly alleviate? No, it didn't. And in fact, Jeffrey was one of the hardest cases we ever worked on in retrospect. He actually, last year, he had resisted getting the help that he needed, all the money was raised. He just didn't want the services. And he ended up passing away on the streets. And so it's kind of like, well, why would you share an opening story that's not this beautiful, happy ending? The reason is I think about what happened with Jeffrey and how this whole community came together and how all these people reached out and wanted to help out, and how Jeffrey, even though he never stepped in to take advantage of the resources that we offered, he knew that there was an option. He knew that there were people that loved him and that cared for him, and that if he ever wanted to take that step, he could. And unfortunately, with addictions and substance abuse and mental health issues that he faced, he never took that step. But I also knew that Jeffrey wasn't the only one, and that this shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't be in a world that is just disconnected, this digitally on it, and then have an entire community of people all around the world potentially looking for a person and then not knowing where they're at. So it led me to say, I need to quit my job and start doing this work full time. What I found over the last few years in doing this work is what I want to share with you now. So in San Francisco alone, 1 out of every 3 people who are homeless, experiencing homelessness, has lost their social support systems. 1 out of 3. Sometimes family and friends is part of the problem, not part of the solution. So it's cases of LGBTQ youth running away from a hostile, unsafe home environment, domestic violence, where a person needs to get away from their partner. It's not to say that family and friends are just the solution all the time or the only thing. We have an affordable housing crisis. But I can't imagine how my life would be if I didn't have people that I could call when I was in need. And for many of our neighbors experiencing homelessness, there's a level of isolation and disconnectedness of what we call relational poverty. That's almost inconceivable. And to just understand how it's such a powerful tool for ending homelessness, 60% of the successful shelters in the city and county of San Francisco, 60% of people who leave shelter and get housed, it's from family reunification. So it's a huge intervention that's overlooked by a lot of providers. And I started Miracle Messages to try to focus on this relational poverty aspect of homelessness that I feel is often overlooked. So it leads to this question, and I'll share a little bit about the work we've done and how you can get involved. But I want to really take a moment because I think I know all of you are such deep thinkers, and I really wanted to spend some more time on the problem. Why are people disconnected in the first place? So I've identified 3 or 4 reasons. First is digital barriers. People don't have devices who are often homeless. Devices get lost, stolen, phone numbers change. So technological barriers where someone moves, they don't know how to do the online search. How do you reconnect? So that's a big issue. Bureaucratic barriers. In the US, shelters, because of HIPAA laws, which is like a health privacy information law, you're not required, if you go to a shelter, if you say, hey, I'm looking for my brother Joe, and Joe's there, the shelter will say, oh, we can't confirm or deny whether they're there. And I understand that there's reasons why someone would not want to be found, for their own safety. But you'd think that there could be an opt-in system to say, hey, if someone reaches out to me, I want to be notified, or at least deliver the message to me so I can have that choice. Right now, families put missing person flyers up at shelters on bulletin boards looking for their homeless relatives, and there's not a good way to find them. A third is the economic barriers. With 1 out of every 2 Americans a paycheck away from not being able to pay rent before the pandemic. These are before the pandemic here. A lot of families facing stresses that are not that dissimilar from a person who's experiencing homelessness. So that's a big reason. But the number one reason of all, I wanted to put a video here, and I wanted, watch this video, and then if you want to unmute yourself or in the chat, maybe take a moment, tell me what you think the number one reason is for people to be disconnected. Listen to Ben as he shares a little of his story.
I came here and I knew that maybe somebody like you guys could maybe help me out a little bit, because I'm an alcoholic and I got a problem and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do anymore. And I haven't talked to my family in forever, and I'm just worried that they hate me. And I really miss my sister Catherine a lot, because she's my sister. And I really miss my brother Rusty, and I miss my brother Gary, and I miss my dad a lot. And haven't been very good to him, but it's not because that I don't care about them. It's that I don't really care about myself a lot, and that's why I've been away for a long time. And I just want to tell you, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. I miss you guys, and I wish I could figure out some way to reconnect with you guys. Okay, I guess that's all I gotta say.
So the reason, some of you are thinking of it here is that we've seen over and over again is a level of shame. Shame, self-loathing, stigma, otherizing, feeling so worthless that when I ask, do you want to record a message to a loved one? And a person says yes, and they change their mind. The most common reason why they change their mind is, I can't, I feel dirty. This internalized sense of worthlessness. And the truth is that we play a major role in creating this experience for our neighbors experiencing homelessness, in how we look at people, how we treat people, how we see people as problems to be solved rather than people to be loved. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the shame and the fear and the self-loathing that many neighbors on the streets face, and also that I know many of us in our own communities, in our own hearts face. I'm hoping, so, I think about a biblical verse that maybe is just, you're getting started, it's January 1st, you're reading the Bible cover to cover, so you're just reading it through and you read Genesis 3:10, right? I heard you in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And I read this a couple of years ago doing this work, and I was like, this is the same thing we're talking about with our neighbors on the streets. I heard someone coming that was going to see something about me that I was ashamed about, something I had done. I felt like I'd let them down. And so what did I do? I was called to your arms. I was called open, but I said, no, I can't do it. It's too much. I hid. I isolated. I disconnected. And I know, words like what Richard Rohr said, a person who I really hold in high esteem in the church, that people are often punished by their sins, not for their sins. That we're often punished by their sins. This knowing that you could have done better, knowing that you made an error, knowing that there was something off about that. And so, I want to personalize it for a sec, because it's very easy to just say, here's all this stuff going on. For me, when this happened with Jeffrey's story, I prayed shortly after that God would find a way to find someone else to do this work and not have it on my heart. Maybe some of you can relate. You're like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I care enough. I don't know if this is, my calling. And so I really thought about it for a while. And, I actually had a chance to go to Israel. This is not a picture of me, by the way, but you got that. So I was in Israel, sitting on a rock kind of comparable to this fellow. And I did an ancient Jewish spiritual practice called hitbadadut. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it. This is like Jewish mysticism, like really cool, interesting stuff that I've really taken to heart. And it's basically this practice where you go into the desert or nature, and you talk aloud to God for a period of time. Hey, God, here's what's going on. Here's what but it's very extemporaneous. You're not really filtering it. It's just speaking aloud to God. Hitbadadut. And I did this, and I was shocked by what I was saying, because I was saying, oh gosh, you're not good enough, Kevin. You should have done this. Why didn't you become a lawyer? Life would have been a lot easier, maybe. Why didn't you do this? You did that. You let this person down. Just so self-critique, self-loathing. And it took me until the last minute of this 10-minute exercise. I was exhausted by the end of it, to just stop the bitching and moaning and just see the moon. And I started to cry, because I thought, when I was a little kid, the first word that I said after mom and dad was moon. And I could look at it so carefree as a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 5-year-old. What had I forgotten in 35 years, that I couldn't just see the moon and God's glory in this earth without beating myself up and saying how awful. So I come back from this, and I wanted to share this because I get back, and I just spent this time in Israel. I come back to San Francisco, and that first day back, I see a person experiencing homelessness walking down the street, talking to themselves aloud. And I just paused, and I was like, maybe they're saying something that they need to say. and just the rest of us are just not hearing it and not listening, because I just got back from Israel and I had a lot of stuff I needed to say that I didn't even realize. So I share that hopefully as a connection point to this work, but here's, and start closing here. I wanted to just share, it's not just me walking down the streets anymore with a camera. There's this whole thing called Miracle Messages now, where when we record a message from a partner site or from a volunteer hitting the streets, we have a team of volunteer digital detectives that go online every week, do digital searches to try to find loved ones, deliver messages, reunite folks. So we're not just blasting videos across the internet anymore. So our digital detective, our case solving community, which meets every Wednesday night, if anyone would like to join it, we've reunited over 430 individuals. An average time disconnected is 15 years. And the average time of homelessness is about 7 years for the folks that we serve. Average age is 50. And just as a reference, the average life expectancy on the street is between 42 and 52 years, 52 years old. So we're reaching people at such a vulnerable, critical moment, often who are chronically homeless. 80% lead to a positive outcome in terms of mental health, physical health, and social health. And about 15%, almost 1 in 5, lead to stable housing or living with family again. We also have had a buddy program, because not everyone is going to benefit from reconnecting to mom and dad. We know that. So we've developed a phone-based buddy program, almost like big brothers, big sisters for the homeless, but without the kind of hierarchy. Friend program where volunteers, just like folks like yourselves, sign up to have weekly phone calls and text messages with people experiencing homelessness. So we've made about 150 pairings, and the vast majority of people, less loneliness, less isolation. People get housing through that buddy program, ID cards, they reunite, they get a job. And would love to have any of you volunteer with that, or offer miracle messages and miracle friends to your unhoused neighbors or at partner sites in your community. And then finally, our newest program is our Miracle Money program, where we're now making $500 a month transfers as a type of universal basic income for the homeless. We have 15 participants in that, and all individual donors. That's allowed us $50,000 of $5, $10, $5,000 in a couple cases. That's allowed us to give directly to unhoused neighbors. And then at the bottom, a bunch of media coverage, partnerships, grants, and then we're actually developing a doc series around this work right now. So that will hopefully be on a streaming platform near you in the near future. One story of more recent memory. This is Jasmine and Wayne. Jasmine is a tech worker in San Francisco. Every week, she goes on the streets, hits the streets looking for her uncle, and knew he was on the streets of San Francisco, but couldn't find him. And then he recorded a message through a volunteer outreach. Someone from a corporate group recorded a message from Wayne. They got reconnected, and they were able to get Wayne into housing for the first time in 25 years. And as Jasmine put it, if it wasn't for Miracle Messages, I believe Wayne would have died on the streets or in jail. And that's Wayne surrounded by his family. This is Gabby, and Gabby is our first general manager in South Florida. She hits the streets every day, going up to people experiencing homelessness, offering them to reconnect to loved ones, to join our buddy program. She is, with a very small team of volunteers, help 68 people in South Florida reconnect to their loved ones, 58 of whom have had a positive outcome, and 19 of those 68 individuals have been able to get off the streets as a result, with, again, a chronically homeless average time on the streets of 5 to 10 years. We also have business cards. We're about to get 25,000 cards from Moo that they're donating, which is really exciting. So if you're interested in ordering some business cards or getting the design file, this is an earlier version of it, but basically this is a card that we found to be very effective to hand out to people experiencing homelessness on the streets, inviting them to reconnect to a loved one or get matched with a friend. And that phone number there is our phone number, 1-800-MISS-YOU. So you can call that number, or an unhoused friend can call that number, and they speak to one of our operators standing by, and they'll take down the information to get them into our programs. This is a photo of our team of digital detectives. Usually they work remotely, but one of the few times where they were in person. And we're not just in San Francisco Bay Area. So wherever you are, if you're interested in bringing this work to your local community. This is our interactive reunion map on our website, miraclemessages.org/impact. That's Fort Lauderdale, where Gabby's based. If you click that, it shows all the messages that were delivered all across the country. Charles is one example. So this is just out of South Florida, where the messages had the family members. And then here's a view of the entire country. So you can actually see, in other communities, all the reunions displayed. This is a nationwide, a worldwide issue of homelessness. It's not just a couple big cities that have this problem. So that's on our website. I was told that I should end with a couple challenges. So I want to just mention the hardest part with this work that we found is that we get so much interest from, healthcare providers, corporate sponsors. They're attracted to the work, they're on board, they're ready to go. It's very hard to get them to adopt this and offer this as a referral service to their unhoused clients. So if you have ideas on how that might work, maybe in the Q&A in the fireside, we can talk more about the barriers that are faced in doing this work. But we'd love to find a way to develop a more effective conversion funnel for partners and volunteers to refer unhoused neighbors to us. And finally, just as a close, and I know we're going to jump into the chat, I wanted to just play this short video that will give you a sense of the work from the people who are experiencing the work directly.
Mom, I love you and I miss you and I need to see you.
When's the last time you saw me?
About 10 years, maybe longer.
My kids, I can never find them. They move all the time.
Sure.
What's going on? This is a cry out to my dad. I'm sure you know everything that's going on with my situation right now. I'm going through the same thing that you went through when I didn't see you for years. I love you. I can't wait to see you. And I'm looking for you with all my heart. And whatever it is that I need to do to get back to y'all, I'm gonna do it. I'm just trying to find out what it is, y'all. And to my wife, I love you too.
What was flawless canvas white? What was kindness in our eyes? Is now a blemished masterpiece, and a stigmatism life. But let's cut right to
Hi, David. This is Dad and Sharon. We hope you're okay and that you're doing just fine.
We were very happy to hear from you.
Yes, we certainly were.
the scale from confidence to doubt. I would hold you now.
Hi, Mary.
Yeah, she's right here. Yeah, happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Concentration breaks under frivolous weight. If the right words exist, may they find our lips. Let's stay the course and let the tension
thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate you taking the time and sharing what you're doing. And it's exciting here. Also that there's a lot happening recently too. I think you and I chatted just last week about since COVID. What's now happened since COVID that's disrupted things for you that has been in a good way? Like, I know it seems like it's launched a few new things for you.
Yeah. When COVID hit, we suspended a lot of our street outreach, which was really difficult because that's just the life force of doing this work is being in relationship with people on the street. But because our model really embraces technology and volunteers, we were able to keep, we're very decentralized. Our team is all across the country. We use technology like the hotline, online forms, mobile app, like pretty thoughtful ways. So the main thing has been not being able to hit the streets. We have developed the Miracle Friends program and the Miracle Money programs, the buddy system and the direct cash transfers since COVID started. So that's all in the last year. Just because we have found that we need to be in even deeper relationship with our neighbors experiencing homelessness. And it's not just, find the family, but it's let's walk with individuals that are going through this and learn together how to navigate these broken systems.
Awesome. Yeah, good work to just even seeing those pivots for you guys and innovating in the midst of all this is awesome to see. Can you unpack more of the problem that you guys are having right now? I think you shared a little bit about the effective conversion funnel, but can you just help us understand that problem? Because I'm hoping that we could go into our small group, discuss a little bit more about that.
So I'll give an example. So we just had a mini documentary released in France. Okay. So right now we just had the equivalent of 2020 feature miracle messages in France, primetime television. We had about 150 people reach out wanting to get involved, like volunteers, partner sites. Oh, we do this work. I run a shelter. We need this. So what happens, that's not uncommon. We have a lot of inbound interest. We then get on the phone or we give them the materials. Here's how to offer this in your local community. Here's how to help your unhoused neighbors in your community, in your neighborhood, record a message to a loved one or get signed up to get paired with a buddy through Miracle Friends. And then it's like crickets. It doesn't move. And there's, I think, some reasons for it. The work, even though on the surface, it seems so simple and intuitive, there's a lot of moving parts to make it successful. As I say, this work could be done really well or really poorly, thinking about exploitation, voyeurism, or even not on that end of the spectrum, just like, how do you follow up with a person who records a message? How do you make sure you relay information? If you find 3 potential matches of their mom or their brother, how do you circle back with them and get further information on like the hair color or what school they attended? So I think there's a lot of pieces to make it really successful that I don't know if a lot of people fully understand when they see a video and they're like, oh, I can just walk down the street and go up to people who are homeless and offer this. I think partner sites, the challenge that they face isn't the continuity or the access, it's being overwhelmed. They're just like so swamped with things like under-resourced, overwhelmed. And so caseworkers hear about it. And then if we don't build in ways to go into their workflow, or we don't figure out like an immediate person that they're working with that's receiving services who could benefit from this, it just goes to the back burner. So we know there's probably a combination of maybe having volunteers go to partner sites and opening that door a little bit more, developing better tools, better training, more of a community support. But right now, I think we're falling short of our mandate to mobilize all the people that reach out to us wanting to get involved and all the partner sites that know that this would be beneficial.
Yeah. And then what have you seen around, maybe my last question here, and then I'll just get us thinking about a question to go into smaller groups to discuss. But I just really feel like there's a lot of like as a faith tech community, often one of our struggles as people working in tech is we'll think that technology is the solution to any problem, and that becomes almost like a posture for a lot. Like the technical term is technicism, which is like the problem gets solved with technology. And so, I'm hesitant to even kind of go down the path of like, well, what's the technology solution that we can have for you in this case? So knowing that for sure, I think there's an element here of getting involved, actually hands, feet, serving, volunteering, being on calls. I think like my hope is that some of us feel that challenge and feel that conviction from you. But to go on the technology side, as builders, as creators, as designers, as problem solvers, as thinkers, we love to kind of get at the core of a problem and try to explore what technology could exist there. Or do you have some initial thoughts when you think of some of the stuff you've tried over time from a technology standpoint that hasn't worked, that has worked, that you'd be willing to share with us, just so we're getting a better sense of that, essentially the combination of what you guys have tried and that technological barrier that also exists, as you shared, of the 4 barriers. One was technology. And I think that's really fascinating to try to think, oh, there are ways that you can help with that barrier as well.
So great question. And I'll answer it in 3 parts. So first part is when we are doing this work, I've been doing it now for 6.5 years. I, for a long time, felt like I was an imposter in doing this work because I didn't think homelessness was my issue. And the reason I want to start with that is because I think people may hear a talk like this and they're like, well, homelessness, but I care about all these other issues and maybe it's not my issue. I would invite everyone who's listening to think about, well, is it homelessness that resonated tonight? Maybe it is. Maybe that is your issue. It's not my issue. I really don't believe homelessness is my issue. But what I consider my issue is my belief in the intrinsic value of each person and the interconnectedness of us all. And it just so happens that our neighbors on the streets are disconnected and not treated as valuable. So I start with that because whatever I could say next around technology, if there's not a sustained commitment to this issue, it's going to come and go. So that's what led me to commit to this issue. And I invite you to reflect on what might convince you to do the same. So answering your question directly, we had a grant to do some work in Boston. And I was in Boston and we had all these best and brightest Silicon Valley investors and advisors supporting us. And the thing that all of them were pushing on us was to develop a kiosk. This was the magic idea. So what that meant was an iPad on a display stand at a shelter, self-service, where you basically go in and you're able to say, hey, I want to reconnect to my loved one. You click the iPad and then it routes you to the caller who's helps you take the information. All the technologists said that was the way to do it. It was a disaster. It was unmitigated disaster. First, a lot of shelters don't have Wi-Fi. So we ended up finding ourselves installing Wi-Fi networks and phone networks at these places. Second, when we got the networks working, then people who are accessing this device, there's visual impairments, there's hearing impairments. And also, it's not an intuitive thing. You don't see an iPad on a display stand and say, I'm going to reconnect to my brother or my mom or dad that way. And I think about it like, if we go to the supermarket, we see those self-checkout stands. We know exactly what those are meant to do, but we still need like one teller for every 4 or 5 of those to like help us troubleshoot. So a person who's homeless, but what was interesting is we put up posters advertising the kiosk. And, go to the kiosk, you want to reconnect to your mom or dad, you want to reconnect to someone, go to the kiosk. People were not going to the kiosk, but what they were doing is at the very bottom of the poster, we had a little phone number saying, give us a call if you have any questions. And people were calling that number saying, hey, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do the kiosk. Right. And finally, after a while, we just said, well, why aren't we actually just promoting the phone number? Like, why are we using the kiosk? So I think the biblical phrase that comes to mind in the third part of this is the concept known as dislocated exegesis. Dislocated exegesis. This idea that maybe in the biblical sense, where we read the Bible influences how we read the Bible, right? Where we design our products influences the products that we design and how we do it. And so if you're in a prison and you're reading the Bible, you're probably thinking about passages of forgiveness very differently than if you're sitting there at a hotel in the lobby. And so what we've learned with technology is we have to go and start where people are that we want to serve and listen to them and follow threads and develop from the ground up in partnership. And if we do that, then we come up with some really exciting stuff. So like
Awesome.
1-800-MISS-YOU. Yeah. So
Yeah, right. Thanks, Kevin.